everyone, Coach MAG. All right, here's what we're going to talk about today. Very quick tip for you. A lot of sellers right now, when we're talking about pricing strategies for sellers, a lot of them feel, remember, if your house was valued, let's say you had $500,000 worth of equity extra in January, and let's say you're down to $400,000 equity right now, the seller is always typically going to feel like they've lost that $100,000. So if your house was worth, let's say, $1 million in January and it's worth $900,000 now, the sellers automatically go into an emotional response and they start going, man, like emotionally they feel like, oh, somebody's taken $100,000 from me. So one of my biggest tips that I like to talk to listing agents about at the table is, try to understand that people are sitting, unless you bought the house a year ago, they're sitting overall, in Canada especially, on massive amounts of equity. Okay, the average Canadian has tons of equity in their properties. So go back to more logical conversation. The emotion of losing money that you never actually had typically is a feeling. So get them back into the logical and say, hey, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I just want to point out something. You're sitting on $400,000 worth of equity. You've owned the house for 10 years. That means every single year that you've owned the house, your property has given you $40,000. That's incredible, isn't it? That's $40,000. That's amazing. And if they start bringing up that extra $100,000, say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I totally appreciate that you feel like you've lost $100,000, but putting it into perspective, that's the difference between $40,000 and $50,000 a year for 10 years. So I think, overall, sure, you'd love to have that $50,000 every year. And at one point you did, but right now you're sitting on $40,000 a year for the last 10 years. Isn't that fantastic? They're going to say, yeah, that's actually pretty good. That's amazing. But here's the thing, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is we're in a market right now where you didn't do anything typically to get that $40,000 a year. And as you know, you had that $50,000. However, right now, if we sell your house for the price that we want to sell your house for, we can capture that $40,000 a year. Ultimately, that's the goal that we want to have. And you are working against a lot of many factors that want to take away and make housing more affordable. So they want to take away as much of that $40,000 a year as possible. So my suggestion is we price the house to sell, we celebrate, and we try to hold on to as much of that $40,000 a year for the last 10 years that you've earned. Isn't that a great strategy? So the thing is you're rewarding your clients by saying, hey, emotionally it sucks to have seen your house drop $100,000 in value, but that was a fictitious amount that you didn't have anyway. And you want to kind of highlight the fact logically that they're sitting on massive equity still, divided by the amount of years that they've owned it. And when you start talking like that, they start to change and they go, oh, I actually have one. And then when you point out the fact that that $40,000 a year typically, or whatever the number ends up to be, so in some cases it's $100,000 a year, you put it down there and you say, guys, that's an amazing win. However, that money can decrease just like it did before. So if you really want to get this house sold and you want to capitalize on the profit margin that your house has made for you, you should list at what we're telling you list at. Let's really market this property and get it sold for you, and so you can cash out on that amount. Okay? So it's really taking that emotional statement, moving into something very logical. And when you break it down, folks, it's pretty phenomenal. When you start looking at how much equity people have in their houses, it's fantastic. And that really changes the dynamics at the listing table. It gets the clients excited, but it also frames them in their head to price it the way you want to price it, because nobody wants to lose more of that equity that they've gained. And if they've already experienced a loss, they're going to be a lot more cautious to protect what they already currently have. Okay? Great strategy.